take our breaths away with its glow.
Whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. I'm Maria Thompson Corley. If that quote from Philippians resonated with you, stay tuned. I'd love to introduce you to intriguing, creative people whose light is making our world a lovelier place. Welcome to Finding Beauty. Talking to David Cohen. He's a Philadelphia-based, well, how many instruments do you play, David? About 4 or 5 at this point? Something like that?
Well, in my full time being a musician, I think it was around 4 instruments regularly. And
yeah,
if I had to, I could play a few others.
So I'll just say multi-instrumentalist and also very heavily involved in charity work. And he's just come back recently from touring with his second recording. We'll talk about that a little later. So the instruments that you are currently playing are guitar, pipa, and bagpipes. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you used to play the oud. Is that pronounced correctly? Okay.
Yes.
And so we may as well get this first things first out of the way with the thing that defines you most. And so can you tell me about your Joan Armatrading obsession?
I love Joan Armatrading. She's a great musician, and her music is what made me pick up the guitar. And she's just remained an incredible musician. So that, that's what I've seen her, I think at this point, 93 times live since 1977.
Okay. And you got to meet her at one point as well, is that right?
Well, I've met her quite a few times.
Okay.
And she's incredibly, amazingly nice and real sincere. And I was lucky enough to interview her one time for my website.
And we'll get back to your interview. Well, maybe I'll say that right now, which is that when I asked you to do an interview, I had managed to forget that you had done a lot of interviews. So try to just sit back and be interviewed and not, critique, and we'll just talk here, if that's okay.
There's no critique here.
Okay, that sounds good. So you got excited about playing the guitar from being exposed to the music of Joan Armatrading, but your path to becoming a guitarist or a professional musician was not the typical one. I mean, I went to school, and whoever was on faculty at that school was who I studied with. That wasn't the way that you went about it. Am I right?
Well, there were teachers that I targeted that I wanted to study around the United States, and that's why I studied with them. And higher education wasn't part of the family dynamics, I guess. I don't know what the word would be, but that wasn't there. And especially for music, I mean, I grew up when all you hear, like, all these people get discovered by this or by that. So I just didn't know that you went to school to study music. And I did it. This is what I always wanted to do. So I did it. I just did it.
And you were a pastry chef, is that right? And that's how you paid for it?
Right. When I moved out to California, I started working in bakeries. And that was paying for my existence and also paying for me to study with people. I got great at baking, so I ended up becoming a pastry chef, and that enabled me to travel around a lot and study with amazing, incredible composers and musicians throughout my life.
Yeah,
and that's what I did until I got to the point where I was like, okay, no more getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning to work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then sleeping for 2 hours to go out and, take lessons and then do gigs. So I would get 1 hour of sleep before I had to get up.
See, that just exhausts me even thinking about doing that. I guess you were younger back then. I can't imagine.
Yeah, younger. Very.
that helps. So, as I mentioned, we talked about Joan Armatrading and that you were an interviewer and that you had interviewed her. Can you tell me other people that you interviewed that were particularly memorable?
Well, they were all absolutely incredible. I mean, phenomenally amazing, incredible. One guy was a total jerk. I think I unintentionally uncovered that he lifted this program he was doing from somebody else. So I asked him a couple questions, and then it was not a good interview, and I had to call the agency that's, I'm purposely not naming names here.
I figured that, yeah.
But I called the agency that set up the interview, and I said, look, he's going to call you back and tell him this. But, he was actually the most unprofessional and unpleasant person I've ever spoken with in my life. The good things were more memorable, but that always stuck in my mind because, one of the reasons why I started doing the interviews, I had a website, PhiladelphiaClassicalMusic.com, and I still own the domain, and I'll always have it. It just leads to my personal website now.
Okay.
But I started the website because at the time there was zero information on classical music in Philadelphia. My wife and I were looking for things classically to do, and because I knew all of the organizations, I knew where to look. There was no comprehensive place that had any information at the time. And plus I had a gig where I received zero attention by any of the press, and kind of irritated by that. And, I was very irritated. So I started the website, and I wanted to start it. I wanted to interview. There had to be something on there to bring people. So I started interviewing people, of course, to expose the person and what they do. But I personally wanted to see if the way they spoke was as expressive as their music.
And was it typically?
Yes. There were a few people. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It was interesting the way certain musicians would phrase things. Some were really laid back, and they also had a very laid back, approach in their music, which I found interesting. So it was very educational for the people who were reading the interviews, but they were educational for me as well because I was on my own path of discovery.
It is very educational to talk to different people about not only their journey, but their attitude towards art and music, and sometimes we bleed over into life. So I can see why you'd say that. I mean, I don't know where you were in your journey as a performer. You were already quite well established when you started doing that. Is that right?
Yes.
But still, I mean, it's still educational, definitely. Okay, so you play or have played 3-string instruments and then the bagpipes, which is completely not related. So can you tell me how you picked up the bagpipes?
I've always loved the bagpipes. I always wanted to play them. And one morning I woke up and I said, there's no reason why I shouldn't be playing the bagpipes. So I contacted the local bagpipe band in Jersey where I was living and working at the time, the pipes and drums of the Jersey Shore Shillelaghs in Belmar, New Jersey. It's the North Jersey Belmar, not the South Jersey Belmar. And, I went in and I said, do you teach, given that it's a cultural club and they're legally allowed to refuse entry to anybody who's not part of the culture, and that's just the law with any cultural organization or heritage organization.
Because I was thinking you're Mexican and Jewish background, so I was thinking that wouldn't be a natural assumption, perhaps, that bagpipes would be your thing, but they were okay with it, obviously.
Well, I went in, I said, do you teach Jews? And they just looked at me and laughed. I knew they thought I was an idiot with that. But but also coming from like my background of working in tourism, and I know that ethnic clubs like an Irish organization or even if it was a Mexican organization, they can refuse entry if you're not part of that heritage because it's,
Yeah.
And the person I spoke to said, we'll take anybody. You just have to be able to laugh at yourself. So I found a home. I've been with them since, and I love playing the bagpipes.
And so let me be sure that I understand. Like, you were a freelance musician, and that was your thing completely for a while, and then you had a background in tourism, and then you went back to get more
study in tourism, or can you explain that? Because that is, you have now a real day job, and yet you're continuing to find ways to make music and travel and stuff like that. And so, I mean, how did you decide to go back to the day job, or am I confused?
Well, no. It's not that you're confused. It's just very confusing because when people ask me what I do, I'm like, well, do you have an hour? Because to be a musician, to be a freelance musician, you have to do a million things. A lot of public relations, a lot of marketing, a lot of website development, a lot of like studying the websites, and a lot of business. I was a freelance musician, but I'm a businessman. Mm-hmm. And, part of understanding what I do, and this is something that actually came from Riverdance, speaking about the Irish. I was listening to this interview with Michael Flatley, and the interview, Michael Flatley, was known for having a very large ego.
Dance. Yeah.
Right. And the interviewer said to him, you're very cocky. And Michael Flatley said, well, I could sit here and say, oh, I think I'm good, but like this is where I have to get better. But I know how much people are paying for that seat in the front row. And do you think they really want to sit here and listen to me say, I think I'm kind of good? So, not that I think I am great, but it's a business, and what I generate enables me to study to be the great musician that I want to be one day. So I'm a businessman, and that's how I approached it. So inside of that, I worked a lot in tourism because of the event, my event business that I had.
Okay.
And all of that. So through that, I became the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Ocean Grove, New Jersey, where my business is registered. And through that, led me to just a whole different avenue with it. So that's where I said the tourism background, and I studied tourism when I went to school as an adult.
And so let's maybe listen to some music. That would be cool.
Okay.
So maybe we start with your first CD. Can you remind me, when did that one come out?
That one came out in 2011.
2011. Okay, and can you tell me about it? It was just called David Cohen Guitar, correct?
Right.
Okay.
That was a very big change in my life. That was my farewell, more or less, to music. All of the music actually on there was written in the first few months after my wife passed.
Yeah.
And it was a struggle for me to pick up the instrument or any of the instruments. So all of that music came from that time, and it was like I struggled so hard. My wife passed from ovarian cancer, and in the 2 years that she fought, I pretty much didn't practice. So a lot of when I had my gigs, because I still had to pay the bills, I was mostly improvising and my mind was just jelly at the time. And I didn't think that I would pick up the instruments again because it's a different life. I just don't have that, or I didn't at the time have that, whatever it is that makes you want to create beauty. So I struggled to do all this, and that was going to be my farewell. So that's what my first CD was. And then they're all original compositions, and I still play music. It did come back.
Yeah.
That's what my wife would want.
I didn't identify that piece that we're opening the show with Tatyana, and Tatyana was her nickname. Is that right?
Well, her nickname was Tanya. Or actually, her nickname was Tuchka, which means cloud in Russian.
Okay. And so Tatyana was her actual name, and Tanya was her nickname.
Right.
Okay.
Or Tuchka. Tuchka was her nickname. Tanya was a shortened version of Tanya.
Okay. And I've studied some languages. Slavic ones are not so much. So Tuchka, is that what you said? Is that right? Tuchka. Oh, that was not so hard. Okay, I can do that. Okay, and then another thing I'd like to listen to from that same CD is The Last Time I Saw Paris.
That was Every Minute in Paris.
Every Minute in Paris. Sorry, Last Time I Saw Paris is a standard. Okay, so is Every Minute in Paris. I'll pretend I got
Right.
that right. Hopefully I can edit it. Okay, so can you tell me what's behind that title?
Well, yeah, Every Minute in Paris was when my wife was in a you know when the reality set that she was going to pass, and we were talking, and she said, if there was a moment in our life, where would I want to go back to? And I said, Paris. And I said, where would you want to go back to? And she said, Paris. Because that was our dream trip, and we went there when she was first in remission. And it was just absolutely amazing. She didn't have cancer there. And we both had this like new sense of life. And it was absolutely amazing. The French were amazing. I mean, it was just an amazing time. And she said, you know, I would go back to Every Minute in Paris. So that's where that came from. And that piece, Dark, Cold Rain, and Saying Goodbye, were three pieces on that CD that were thought of in like a 1 second span in my mind. They came as a flash. And I sat down and just put on my iPhone so I could film myself, so I could record visually myself doing it. It was just this flash to do it. And this way I could at least go back if I had to refer back to what I was doing. But I played it through the first time, and there was like a couple minor changes, one in a bass line towards the end, but other than that, what's on the CD for Cold Rain and Saying Goodbye were all gifts from Tanya.
Wow. And okay, so this was, I guess, a therapeutic, even though, you feel like you were saying goodbye to music, but I guess also sort of processing what you had been through. And for that, you were recognized as the best instrumentalist by the Jersey Acoustic Musicians Awards. And from what I read on your site, it says that you were the first classical musician to even have been nominated, and that was in 2012. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was amazing. Because I'm a Jersey boy, so to speak, and I know a lot of friends were in the Jersey music scene. I always paid attention to the awards, just because it was such a great thing. It was very exciting. So a friend had posted on Facebook, congratulations to my friend David Cohen for being nominated, because when that was happening, I wasn't like paying attention just because of what I was going through with the grief and everything. So I saw on his Facebook page, like, congratulations to my friend David Cohen for being nominated. And I was like, oh, I didn't know Austin knew two David Cohens. So I clicked on the link to see who this other David Cohen was that he knows, and it's me. And I was like, wow. I was, it was really, really exciting. Because it was for Jersey rock and rollers. Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi, I think, have won honorary awards with that organization. So, I was the first classical musician, and I won for best instrumentalist.
So another thing that came out of the experience, I guess, that led to the recording and losing your wife was an association with Fox Chase and their cancer center. Yeah.
Right, the Fox Chase Cancer Center.
I mentioned at the beginning that you do a lot of philanthropic work, and I would like to spotlight that because I think that's wonderful. And you started off with Ocean Grove and raising money for the food bank. Maybe we'll go back and pick that up later, since I already started talking about Fox Chase. But can you tell me a little bit about the ways that you've been helping to raise money for them?
It's not a matter of raising money, because whatever I could raise would supply maybe one pack of paper.
Okay.
They have some very heavy-duty donors, but the work that I did with them was more, it was a lot of awareness for ovarian cancer in general, but also with Fox Chase, I was working with them and helping them to develop their Patient Family Advisory Council. It's a movement that's been around for a while, but it was mostly in Children's Hospital. and it was now starting to take root in more acute settings, more like general. I don't want to say general hospital. Days of our lives. No, more in regular hospitals, and it's the care that where the patients are listened to. The care my wife got at Fox Chase was absolutely amazing. There were times where I would watch what I would call children, like doing things that I'm like, oh, I've wasted my life playing music. Like these people are doing these amazing things on a daily basis. On a basis, these people, these young children deal with death all day. Death and horrible diseases and disfigurements and, so the care was amazing there. But again, and this was more on a customer service level that, they needed, that all hospitals need to change. They still do. And interestingly enough, I was at a meeting the other day, and I was surprised to find out this one particular place, they're very slow in their adaptation to this type of customer service. And it's just, it's basic common sense where everything is centered around the patient as opposed to the doctor. And an example of that, and this is one of the examples I do when I do orientations or I do lectures on patient-centered care, is my mother-in-law had to go into the hospital. And when I was asking about the visiting hours, they said it's from 11 to 7. And I said, 11 to 7, isn't that convenient for who? The doctors or for the patient? Yeah. So they said, okay, well, I'll talk to my nurse supervisor and see if you can come in early. And I said, look, I'll save you the time. I'm going to come in at 7 o'clock. My father-in-law hasn't been away from his wife in the 55 years they've been married. So you're not going to let him sleep over. He's going to come in at 7 o'clock. So when we got there at 7 o'clock in the morning, every room had family members in the room. So it's stuff like that. It's just common sense. Like now a good hospital will not have like visiting hours from like 7 to 9, whatever. You go in when you go in. Because is it easy for you or is it better for the patient? So that's how I got involved with Fox Chase.
Great. So doubling back to my other question then, I was going to ask you, which came first, your desire to be a musician or your desire to give back to the community? Because I know that with Ocean Grove and I guess being head of the Chamber of Commerce, that was how you started the annual food drive concert. Is that's still an ongoing thing?
It was the Monmouth and Ocean County Food Bank concert.
Okay.
That I don't want to say like I'm high on myself, but I've always had it in me to help others. Mm-hmm. I was always bringing stray animals home, when I was little, stuff like that. You can't have a raccoon in the house. It doesn't want it, can't you see by the bite marks and the scratches? Let it go.
Exactly. Your mom was, that was restrained. But the impression that I got was that it came out of your own experiences. I mean, I'm not saying that you wouldn't have wanted to help people anyway, but do you want to talk about that or not?
Right, sure. Growing up, when my dad left, it was just like the greatest day ever. That was my birthday, the day that he said he wasn't coming home. I'll never forget it. I said, can I have your train set? Just like, get out. I want the train set. So, and that, he left and it was great. And we were steeped in poverty after that. And we relied on food from the food bank. Mm-hmm. And you forget about these things, but at one point as an adult, I was talking with some friends, and one of them was very well off, and she was reminiscing about how poor her and her husband were when they both graduated school, that they had to rely on the food bank. And I was like, wow, the food bank. I remember that. So what I started doing was I was making a little bit of money at the time. So when I would go shopping, I would just buy like canned food and just store it at the end of the month. I would take it to the local food bank. So I had a stash of food, and I called the Monmouth and Ocean County Food Bank. And actually, at the time, it wasn't even called that. It was like, I think, the St. Catherine's Food Bank. It was a Catholic church in Spring Lake, New Jersey. And I called and I spoke to sister, and I said, what time do you close? And she said, we're closing in 5 minutes. I was like, okay. And she said, but if you're hungry, I'll wait.
Mm.
And I was like, that floored me. And I said, no, I wanted to bring some food. And she said, I'll still wait if you want to bring food. Or, I said, no. No, I'll bring it on, like Monday or something. So that was what started me on this yearly food bank concert that I had. And, because I was the president of the Chamber of Commerce, it gave me some clout and some power to pull this thing off all on donations. Mm-hmm. And it was held in Ocean Grove, New Jersey, and it was held in the Ocean Grove Youth Temple. Ocean Grove it's a Methodist resort, and that's what its foundation is. That's what its history is, and it's still very religious. All the buildings are only used for religious events. I was the only non-religious event that they ever allowed in the building, and they were absolutely amazing to let me have that. So that went on for 10 years, mm-hmm. which was amazing because the life cycle of an event is usually 5 years.
Yeah.
So that went on for 10 years, and it was great.
I don't know, just the ways that you have found to combine so many different things. For example, a lot of times people who are artists or are musically inclined and have always been drawn towards music, branching out these days, I think, is encouraged in the sense of, okay, you are a business person and you should be looking at it as a business and all that sort of stuff. But it seems that you always, maybe, I don't know if it was growing up without a silver spoon, always had this sense of just being aware of the other things besides, okay, I'm going to be an artiste. And so you're working your way up in the Chamber of Commerce and you're organizing these events, and then you're, going to be a pastry chef and all these sorts of things where, it's just really hard to combine being very good at an instrument with keeping up with all these other things. So I guess I'll ask, and I know that, since you are keeping up with the same trend of having a real day job and still performing and trying to promote yourself as a musician, I mean, what allows you to stay inspired enough to work so hard all the time?
Bills. Bills.
Yeah, well, I don't mean that part of it. I mean, like, is the music still seen as something to pay bills? Because the other stuff is what I was thinking pays the bills, but to try to really keep up with performing, you just never lost the excitement of being involved in that sort of thing, I guess. Is that an answer, or?
Well, yeah, and it's I've noticed that the work that I do now is in patient advocacy or along those lines. Right now I'm working for a low-income nursing assistance, senior nursing assistance program, and it's amazing what they do. And I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity to work with the hospital group that I work with. And I'm also working my master's in healthcare administration.
Oh,
and when I'm
okay.
when
I'm
taking
yeah. Okay.
When I stopped doing 6 credits per semester because I did find out what my limit is. I start to go a little nuts when I don't pick up my instrument. So that's why I'm not doing 6 credits anymore. I'm just taking 1 class a semester because if I go a week without picking up my guitar or the teapot or the bagpipes, I start to really, unravel. So I don't know. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
Well, what keeps you inspired, I guess, is maintaining your sanity. It's just like such a part of being able to get through the day that you know that you have that as at least part of your life, even if you're doing all these other things. But, it doesn't sound like, okay, I got to do this to earn a living, but then I can make music. It almost sounds like, you have a real love for the patient advocacy, but, you need a bit of everything. I mean, I don't know, would you want to give up patient advocacy if suddenly you had this opportunity to, I don't know, become super famous and super rich just playing your instruments? Would you give that up? Or, I mean, is that such a hypothetical question that it's kind of crazy to ask it?
No. That's not a crazy question because, my fantasy is that when I accept my Grammy for this really amazing piece that I wrote that was, picked up on a soundtrack, and I've made, $1 quadrillion, and I could afford my private jet so I could fly to all these global warming conferences in my private jet and complain about global warming. You know, like to be,
yes, you raise your carbon footprint.
yeah, you know, I live in my gated community and I scream about socialism. Like, and then I go to accept my Grammy Award and then I realize that everybody's an asshole. And that I don't accept the award. Like, yes, I do have those fantasies, but would I ever give it? I would never give up what I do now because I love what I do, working with patients or working with the seniors. Yeah. Because, before the job I had here, I kind of bugging on these affluent people who scream for socialism. Like, I speak to, people every day who deal with the real world. And it's just listen to what they say more than what these, you know, spoiled people are screaming. There was this one woman who actually used to open up for, I can't think of her name now, jazz singer from Philadelphia, known for her drugs.
Known for her drugs.
Great jazz singer, Billie Holiday.
No. Oh, okay. Yes, she was known for her drugs. Yes,
right.
Okay.
And what about, you know, great musician, you know, but a great, funny woman. And the doctors came in one day and said, the way your illness is progressing, you're not going to live past next Thursday.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I spoke to her a little later on, and we were sitting around joking. I used to take my guitar. I played the blues, and she would sing and everything. It was great. And she said, like, I don't understand something. She would start coughing, and she would say, you know, the way that my disease is progressing, they're telling me I'm not going to be alive after next Thursday. And I said, well, how do you deal with that? She said, well, what could I do? But, like, are they that precise? And Friday, she passed away.
Wow.
You know, I can't give up that access to amazing people like that. You know, I will always do music. I will always do the kind of work that I do now because it's truly amazing, the strength. When I was working in the hospital I worked at before, the senior program I'm in, and with the seniors that I work with, you know, I'll say good morning. I'll say, it is a good morning. God has given me another day. You know, I don't care how bad my back hurts. I don't care if it takes me 10 minutes to get up from the chair.
Yeah. Well, and that is the whole perspective of, you know, people talk about live like you were dying. But, you know, I mean, I think that really brings it into focus, just, you know, the decision of what is really important, what really matters. And I read Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I don't know have you read that book?
No, I haven't read it.
It's in 2014 or something. I think it's relatively recent. But, I mean, what it sort of boils down to, the essence is that it's important for people to have that awareness of what really matters so that when they are in these situations, you're able to know, like, what are the things that you can do without and what are the things that you need to feel like you have a quality of life. So, you know, for some people, you know, they don't mind if they're moving extra slowly as long as they can still, I don't know, eat chocolate cake and it still tastes like chocolate cake or something. You know, I mean, there are all these things that people would decide really mattered in the end. But I guess, you know, and then he was urging people to maybe approach this sort of thought process, not thinking that it's morbid, but just realizing that we're all going to be there for one reason or another. And, you know, that I think what I'm hearing you say is that being in the context of seeing people who are dealing with these things and confronting them and really being brave in the face of it, just looking at it head on, and you helping them perhaps to do that is rewarding and enriching and helps you to feel like you're growing. Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely fair statement. And now comes the shameless self-promotion. My second CD is based off of a lot of the interaction I had with the patients at the hospital that I worked at previously. Yeah. Particularly the tune Signals was written. There was a woman there who had a severe stroke. She was brain dead, which leads to the question of what is brain dead, because the stroke was so severe that it left her severe twitching, spasms. And the only thing that would stop the spasms was music. Yeah. So there had to be music on in her room all the time, so there was always a radio on. And every day I would go in and play in her room for an hour. And the tune Signals was written was what I wrote that playing for this particular patient. And because of HIPAA regulations, I can't say what her name was. But it was a very long ethnic name, but the first part of it was the word signal. And I used to sit there going, what kind of signals is this sending your brain that it stops these severe spasms? So the tune became Signals as a result of that. And also the piece that closes out the CD, it's a very simple piece. It's C, F, and G. I wanted to write a song that was just C, F, and G. Because I tend to not write basic pieces, or at least I don't think they are. But I wanted to write something with just C, F, and G. And the tune that closes out the CD is called, I forget. It's not called I Forget. It's called A Long Memory of Kindness. There was a patient there who had a brilliant human being. And she was in a severe accident that left her paralyzed from the neck down, which led to a lot of other medical problems.
Yeah.
And she was just slowly getting movement in her hand when she was transferring out of our hospital into another one for the next level of care. And I used to spend a lot of time talking to her, totally amazed at the brilliance of this person. And when she was leaving, she asked for my address, and she said, my goal is that I'm going to write everybody a letter when I'm able to, because through this I've learned that, people are really, really nice, and I have a long memory of kindness. So, the CF&G was purposeful in that because it's very basic, it's very simple, and what's more basic and simple than kindness? Not to sound preachy or anything like that, but all of the pieces on that CD are related to people's struggle in health.
And the title, Chaos Theory, and I'm glad that you made this segue for me because it was perfect. Because I was thinking, okay, I need to segue back to Chaos Theory. So how did you choose the title Chaos Theory?
Everything about Chaos Theory, except for the music, was there were errors all along the way, and I didn't correct them because I'm like, okay, because it's all these errors are going to lead up to me being famous so I can go accept my Grammy Award and bust on all these, people for flying in their private jets to global warming conferences. And I was looking up a medical term because all of a sudden, here I go from, talking about chords and music and all this stuff. Now I'm talking about and have access to all this heavy-duty medical stuff going on. So I would read people's charts and medical records, and I would have to go Google every other term. And at one point I was Googling something and chaos theory came up. And I was like, oh my God, I have to write a song to match it, and that's what the CD is going to be called. And
how did you figure out a way to get to Edinburgh and where else in was it mainly Great Britain that you toured with this?
Yeah, I played it in St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh on the Royal Mile. It's, I think, a 13th century cathedral. It's absolutely amazing, an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And then I played in a pub in Sandwich, England, where Thomas Paine is from. It's before the Mayflower made its way across the Atlantic Ocean. It went up the River Stour in Sandwich. There's a lot of history there. And in a Tuesday night music series that this place had. And then I played at the Troubadour in London, which Joan Armatrading started out there. And anybody who's famous from England has started out at the Troubadour, except for the Beatles. They're known for starting out at a club in Germany. So the way that got me out there was there's a piece on the CD called Strictly Pharmaceutical, which it's all about allergy relief. It came from a conversation I was having with 2 wound care nurses, and they were talking about different kinds of homeopathic allergy relief, and I said, I've been through it all. I've lied my way saying that stuff works. At this point in my life, I'm strictly pharmaceutical. So I was like, okay, that's the title. So when the CD came out, I noticed that was picking up in Europe. I'm going, oh my God, I'm making money from a piece of music that I wrote. And people were downloading a lot in Sweden. Scotland and England. And
okay.
I'm like going, oh my God, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So the pipe band that I was in we were doing a tour of Ireland. So I'm like, I'm there, let me do it. Let me go ahead and do it. And I just booked everything. I sent demos of my stuff out. And what's really amazing is, and people have always said to me, you're never going to make a living being a classical music here. You have to go to Europe. And I'm like, I don't want to go to Europe. I'm an American, right? But, you know, and here it's like I can't get club gigs, and I understand, you know.
Yeah.
I make my money private events, and I do well. I send my stuff out to clubs there, and they're like, oh my God, we want you. Oh my God, when are you coming here? When are you coming here? You know, and even the Troubadour, I had a different date set up, and they had called me and said, we are so worried we made a mistake. Are you at all possible on like the Friday night instead of the Thursday night? And I'm like, are you kidding? A gig on a Friday night in London, of course.
Yeah,
Yes,
really.
I'm available, you know? And
yeah.
it just really worked out.
I know over here, I see that there have been attempts like Le Poisson Rouge in New York to try to do classical music in more kind of pub-like spaces. But I guess it's not something that has caught on as much as maybe they were trying to make it do. But
I've tried that for years. Even with my website, when I had my website, I was trying to do this whole thing of like a classical music, like make music in Philly with that free music thing. Somebody's getting funded to get people to play for free. I wanted to see what that was about, so I did that, I think, 1 or 2 times, and, you know, I'll never do it again. To me, it's a degrading thing. You know, promote music, make music Philly. We're going to get you to play for free, but somebody else is getting funding, and they're getting a salary job to get musicians to pay for free. But that's all beside the point. But, you know, trying to get something set up in Philly that the classical music in the pubs and stuff like that, but nobody was into it. I had a couple gigs up in New York playing in clubs, and they put you on at 7 o'clock and on a Saturday night. And that's great because I did it for marketing myself. That was the prime reason. I knew that people weren't going to come out on 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. So when you talk to club owners and they're like, can you guarantee 15 people are going to come? I'm like, I can guarantee that I'm going to put on a good show, but let's cut all the BS here. You know, I could tell you that I'm going to bring 15 people like every band does, and then when only 3 people show up, you know, don't be mad at me, you know. So you can either take your chance with a really good artist coming in on a time that you wouldn't have anybody, you know, and they're like, all right, thank you for being honest, but we're not interested. So, you know, it's different here. And, you know, it's different. That's fine. That you learn how to make your money in other ways.
If you have to go somewhere to play, you know, there's certainly some great places to go in Europe, you know, just to be there. But okay, I have 2 more questions, and they're the questions that I'm asking people. And you've kind of alluded to an answer to this first question about beauty and how you define it and what is its importance.
Beauty, it's different and it changes all the time. You know, like for instance, and this is something that actually that I think about a lot. You know, in addition to like the ugliness of the disease that I was around and seeing all the pain and the ugliness in the hospitals and stuff, a few years back I had a gig playing with Ballet X, and it was during their intermission, and they would have local musicians come in and play on their stage, and you know, people would hang out and listen and buy your CDs, which was pretty cool. And so I did it for a week. I'd come out and play the bagpipes at their intermission. Everybody loved it. At least they pretended they did. No, everybody loved it. And but this was also at the time when Sandy hit.
Oh.
And so during the day, I was running like gas and food up to people who needed it up in Jersey. So like 90 miles away, it looked like a third world country. People waiting in line for gas. It was unbelievable. It was, and the devastation, it was heartbreaking. And you're just up there around all of this ugliness and all this like pain and all this like misery. And then I just, you know, come back to Philadelphia and I would play, you know, at the intermission, but I would also watch the ballet every night. And it was so incredibly beautiful that it was like the contrast between like that ugliness and what beauty is. And, you know, like I still think about that all the time because it left such a strong impression of that beauty compared to, you know, the ugliness of nature, of what it can do.
And I guess if there is no ugliness, then there is no beauty, if you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay, my last question for you is, can art change the world?
It could record history. Can it change the world? I don't know. Has it? That's an interesting question, because it's superficial if it changes it, because change takes a long time. Could it lead to change? Interesting.
I mean, I see the way that you use art, sort of like the butterfly theory, in the sense that you change things just by, if I move my pencil, then something has changed, which wasn't the framing of my question, but I was thinking, if you are taking your guitar and you are soothing somebody as they are on their journey, transitioning out from this world to the next, that is, to me, art in some way changing the world, in that each person's reality that is impacted in a positive way by something, I think that is changing not the entire world, because you can't change every place, every person at the same time. But I think that just our capacity as interconnected beings to add positive value to the overall, I think every bit of positive value that people can add makes some difference, even if it's not, as you say, it's incremental. I suppose like the glaciers are incremental too, and with enough momentum, they were able to create great change in the world, but just not very quickly. And, some of it, I guess you can say, were glaciers always a good thing. I guess if you were caught in the ice age, you weren't so happy, but, anyway. Well, David Cohen, it was a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for your time. I'm Maria Thompson Corley. Thanks for listening to Finding Beauty.
The theme music for Finding Beauty is Symphony of Light, written and performed by Tatyana Corley, with assistance on the cello from Allegra Banks. Rusty Banks was the producer. Right now, you're listening to Liszt's Petrarch Sonnet No. 104, performed by yours truly. You can hear the rest of it on my CD, Music from the Novel Letting Go, available on CreateSpace and Amazon. If you're interested, you can check me out at mariacorley.com or mariasworld.us. You can also find me on Twitter at Maria Corley or YouTube. My recordings are available through Albany or Amazon. My novel, Letting Go, is available on Smashwords, CreateSpace, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. Or drop me a line on my site, and I'll send you a signed copy. I want to leave you with one more quote. Do your little bit of good where you are. It's the little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. Desmond Tutu. Have a beautiful day.